you guys want me to do a freestyle? Is that what it is? TGIF, everybody. Welcome to Iron Will Media's Flat Earth Friday FringeCast. My name is Josh Corey. We've got a hell of a show planned. As always, we've got Walt, we've got John, we've got that Adam, we've got Zach, we've got our big guests this week. We've got Paul on the plane and his coast over there on TFR, Knoxy. Looking forward to tonight's show. Everybody, hold on to your seats. It's going to be another good one.
It's Friday, my dudes.
Everybody, welcome to Iron Will Media's Flat Earth Friday FringeCast. Just a quick hello. We want to get Zach out. I know he's got plans. So, hello, Mr. Zachary Zabala, or good times for all, if you prefer. How are you doing?
Oh, I am doing awesome, Josh. Gentlemen, it's a wonderful day. Glad you all could be here. Yeah, I'm going to go grab some Chinese with my mom real quick, but I'll be back within an hour or so. But yeah, life, nomad life is awesome. Loving.
Gotta love nomad life. Hashtag nomad life. Well, give your mom our best. You enjoy your meal. And take as many hot ones as you can while you can. We are also joined by the Adam Beacon. Also sort of out nomading it, sort of. He's on holiday. How are you doing, Adam? How are you enjoying your time off?
Oh, loving it. I'm not on as big a vacation as back there, but yeah, enjoying it. Looking a bit pink, rays.
Nice. We are also joined by one Mr. John Savage. You see, I know I got something in here. Where is it?
Savage!
Ah, there it is.
Hello, guys. Yeah, looking forward to this. Is there are other people hearing an echo? I mean, it's classic IRM. But
yeah, I'm hearing an insane echo.
Maybe we should all mute and just see what happens.
Oh, talk about classic IRM. I don't know any of this is going out. Nope. So, all those intros, all that shit, and not a effing word went out.
Well, 29, 28 people watching.
Look, I've got so much. I got chat up on the screen. I got stuff from months ago. I don't even know what the hell's going on.
Do you want me to stream?
It's showing live on my screen, Josh.
Yeah. What do you see up there? Nothing. Hold on.
Actually, you're correct now.
All right, let's try this. That should be
the words are going out, just not any of the images.
Oh, people been hearing us?
Yeah, they're hearing everything you're saying. Just letting you know. So, welcome to the realm.
I don't think they heard that intro.
No, I'm listening to it live, even as we speak. I'm hearing us delayed a few seconds ago, listening to what we just said. Promise you, it's happening live.
Sweet. Well, that works out well then. That's only half as embarrassing as I thought it was.
Stopping traffic in my Rasta hat says classic IRM.
Classic IRM.
You know as well.
We've got our stuff together now, guys. I think we're working.
It's just classic Josh. I mean, when Adam is mans the controls. It goes smoothly, no issues, no problems. It's only me.
Well, I don't know about that, mate.
Well, when you had the controls all the time, every week, you were the man on the spot. But since Adam took over, you kind of, lost your zing, I guess.
My mojo. I have gotten a little bit rusty. All my settings were outdated and old. I mean, again, we're still using stuff from months ago here now today, just because Adam's not at home to set us up right.
Well, to say Adam hit the ground running with production of this show is an understatement. So that shows you how vital he has become to what we do every week. Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, you might say that, but I had a good teacher.
All right, that's enough.
Pass them my way. I could use one.
All right, stop kissing ass. Have we introduced our guest yet?
We haven't introduced Walt. Walt was the last one. Hi, Walt. How you doing?
Hey, how you doing, everybody? Welcome to the Iron Real Media Flatter Friday FringeCast here on my echoey sounding mic. All of a sudden, man, what is going on? Anyway, we're here. It's Friday. It's Ferric. You know what's happening. Let's get on with this thing. We have amazing guests. We are excited. We've been waiting all week, or for weeks now, that we've had this set up. But this week the anticipation has been building, and let's do this.
Let's do this. Enough's enough. Everybody, we are welcoming back one Mr. Paul on the plane, but he's mixing it up a little bit. Paul, you don't come alone this time. Welcome back to Iron Realm Media.
Thank you very much. Yes, I am bringing along my wingman, my partner in crime. So nice. Excited to definitely introduce this guy to the show. So who's gonna do that? Let's do that quickly because he's got a lot to say.
Sounds good. Well, let's just jump right on it then, because I don't know too much about him, because I'm really interested to hear everything that he has to say and get to know him a little bit. Because, I mean, if you've got him riding next to you, he can't be all half bad. So this is Paul's co-host, Knoxy. Knoxy, welcome to Iron Realm Media's Friday FringeCast. It's super glad to have you.
Thanks, guys. I'm pretty excited to be here. It's kind of weird, Like, I almost forgot today was the day. I thought it was tomorrow. And then Paul hits me up like, hey, you ready in 20 minutes? I'm like, yeah, sure. But no, I'm really glad to be here. Thanks, man.
Well, it's our absolute pleasure. And turns out we're busting a bit of a cherry tonight, aren't we?
Yeah. I it's my first time ever being a guest on the show. Like, besides co-hosting with Paul on the plane, it's my first time being a guest because previously, as long as I've been doing the research I've been doing, I kind of how can I say it? I don't want to say I didn't want anything to do with flat Earth, but I just wanted to stay away from it and just work on the whole scientific aspect of things. But I don't know, it just called me, like kind of reeled me in. And then when Paul asked me to be his co-host, it's like I couldn't really say no.
Yeah, when an opportunity like that knocks, it's hard to not answer that door. I know the feeling.
Knocks. Like it.
What'd you say, John?
You said opportunity knocks with Knoxy. Like it.
Oh, I get you. I see what you did.
It's echo's terrible, isn't it?
I know. I was just asking chat. Apparently chat on the live show, they're hearing us fine, but here in the call, like Paul just said, they're in chat as well. It is horrible. It's like being in an echo chamber. Somebody's playing with the delay pedal. It's bad. I don't know. It may not be so bad for everybody, but it is distracting.
Yeah, I hear my own voice echoing too.
My own voice, your voice, everybody's voice. I don't know if it's.
Let me try dropping out of the call real quick, and I'll join right back in.
All right.
Yeah, I was wondering if someone might have their computer on or something, and they're hearing the audio coming back from.
No, it's too quick. It's actually too quick for that. It would be a lot longer of a delay coming back with that kind of echo. It sounds like earlier this morning on our live show on TFR, I was hearing a lot of problems.
It's much better now, though, Walt, I must say.
So, yeah, it must have been Josh.
It sounds perfect
now. Why he jumped out. That's why his end, he's taxing everything so much when he runs the show. That's kind of why we had offloaded a lot of that technical weight and responsibility over onto Adam's system. So I guess throwing all of this back onto Josh's system has just got him in a tailspin right now.
You know what I found out, guys, just with Skype and the show on TFR is, and Knoxy knows this very well, is when I pull in a bunch of lines, it bogs down my version of Skype, and we just start having a bunch of technical difficulties.
That's
so we've
exactly
started.
must be it.
Yeah, we've started having, when we've got a guest, to have Knoxy pull him in on his end into the call versus, me just pulling in the studio, the call board, Knoxy, and the guest and all that, because it just seems to cause problems. So maybe
that's a good idea. We might try that for sure.
Got to kind of spread the wealth,
But yeah, man, thank you. That's actually great thinking. And again, as long as we've been doing this, you would think we would have sussed some of this out, but man, it's a lot to figure out when you're just technically inefficient like we are.
I think if you can just drop out and drop back in, it's like it just sort of piles the load on top of me. So if I can hop out of the call and hop back in, it just kind of resets and puts me sort of on top. So hopefully it's on and everything's better.
Everything sounds good now to me.
Sounds good. Should we start again?
Yeah, it's brilliant. Okay, so welcome to the Iron Realm Media Flat Earth Friday FringeCast. We have Paul on the plane, longtime friend and what we consider family member here at the Iron Realm Media, and one of his fellow family members he's brought along, Knoxy, his co-host over there on their amazing TFR show. All right, that's enough. I'm done introducing you guys. What's been up?
Well, I have to say, when I was first granted the opportunity to have a show on TFR, which I was tickled about, and I have you guys partially to thank, and a couple other people like Jaron and Billy Ray over on Infinite Fringe put in a good word for me. But I had the task of, I didn't want to just spend an hour talking to myself, so I had to pick somebody. And, I thought about it for a while, and Knoxy was my first choice. I will being totally transparent, he was, and I'm glad he accepted. I just had a feeling about him. I had a feeling about that this guy would be a great addition. We had some conversations before. I'd talked to him, and there's something special about the guy. So I'm glad that he's showing that my gut instincts were right. I'm super, super excited that that's how it turned out. I didn't have to fire him or cut him loose,
Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate that.
Well, you guys are killing it over there. I'm really digging what you guys are doing. I wish we had your time slot. I'll say that much.
No doubt. Envious,
that is like
sure.
the perfect time slot. Yeah, I met Paul. I think I was in the official Flat Earth and Globe discussion webpage, and I was like, flat earthing the hell out of somebody. And I at that time, I wasn't even considering myself a flat earther, but it's like after all the research I've been doing over the past 2 years, and when I hear these globe believers talking online, and they say things that I knew was just totally incorrect and so stupid sounding, I just had to jump in. And, I'm just like flat earthing the hell out of this guy. And then Paul chimes in. He's like, hey, that's a pretty interesting topic right there, And then we just started connecting in the in our, the private chat. And that's kind of how we started talking about flat earth. And then I think a few weeks later, he was saying he had a show coming up and he wanted me to be his co-host. And I was like, yeah, let's do it,
And just to be clear, the conversation that Knoxy was having, which will segue nicely, I think, into today's topic, was he was schooling some people on, is everybody sitting down? Gravity. There's our old nemesis. So his conversation he was having with these two defenders of the globe about gravity and how it works and all this sort of thing, that's what caught my eye.
Knoxy,
and,
sorry.
No, go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, Knoxy, you've got something in the pipework, haven't you, regarding gravity? Can you let us in on that?
Yeah, I do. So for, like I said, like the past 2 years, maybe a little longer, I've been working on something, a documentary of sorts. And it's taken so long because as I go on, I'm learning new things like every day, almost like, I don't want to call it a new discovery because you can't discover something that just like is already there. It's just like a new realization. You know what I mean? It's something that, because most flat earthers, they pretty much know that gravity doesn't exist. But when it comes to explaining what's happening then, what's keeping us grounded, then everyone has a bunch of different answers. So in fact, I wasn't really looking for the answer when I first started this. I was looking for, I was working with two physicists So at this time, I'm still kind of like a globe believer. I knew about the whole flat Earth thing, but I'm working with these two junior physicists, and there was this contest going on a few years ago. I don't know if you guys heard about it, but it was basically whoever could find a way to detect gravity, like really like have a gravity detector, something to detect gravitons. You know, they would win some prize, like a cash prize or something. Mm-hmm. So these guys were basically trying to detect gravitons, and me and myself, I was hired to document it. Now I'm a filmmaker and an animator, a special effects artist, and everything. So I was hired to document. Yeah, that's what I do for a living, right? Wow. Like I went to school for started off for biomedical engineering, but I got hired to do a lot of art and special effects, and I kind of just fell out of school.
Sorry, I laughed, man. That is great. Go ahead. I'll tell you why in a minute.
Oh, okay, it's cool. Yeah, so I just started doing that. You know, it just like kind of picked up, and that's how I started getting paid. But I always had a passion for science. So when these guys asked me to document, you know, what they were doing, I chose to document it just for fun. Like I was doing it for free. And not only could they not detect gravitons, I mean, we tried the Cavendish experiment, recreating all those crazy experiments. None of them worked the way that they were supposed to, right? No matter how much funding these guys had or whatever.
How long ago was this, Knoxy?
This was, I think it was 2 years ago. It might be almost exactly 2 years ago. I'll need to go back and look at my footage to see exactly what the date was.
And they weren't flat earthers. They were just doing it from a science point of view.
No, not flat. In fact, they don't want anything to do with flat Earth. That was the funny thing. Like when I mentioned it to them, it's like, yeah, whatever. Anyway, we're trying to detect gravity. Do your job, buddy.
How synchronistic is that, though? I mean, that's and you
amazing.
were there to document it. Have you seen? It sort of came out recently or this week about Einstein being the progenitor of the Flat Earth Society's nonsense, rising up at speed of gravity 9.8 meters per second or whatever it's called. Have you seen that it's been traced back to Einstein?
Are you serious? Is this a real thing?
Yeah. I'll try and or maybe someone in the chat knows what I'm talking about. But yeah, it was sort of traced back to the reason why they came up with this rising Earth as opposed to sort of attraction to Earth was sort of suggested even by Einstein. So I'll try and dig something out about that. But that's fascinating. I mean, that's an amazing coincidence that you were all in the right place at the right time. And these guys, I mean, were they funded?
They had some small funding, but it wasn't like they were funded by any like huge corporation or anything. I think it was like family funding, because these are like junior physicists. Like they're not even they hadn't even gotten their degrees yet. You know, These are actually students, and not only did they come to the conclusion that gravity doesn't exist, but together we came to the conclusion that there is definitely something else keeping you grounded. Huh. And you know, popular belief will say it's electromagnetism, but that's actually not what it is either. Not to say that the Earth doesn't have that electromagnetic field, because we all know it does. There's definitely something else.
Intriguing. I'll look forward to that one. And when's that? When do you envisage that coming out?
Hopefully this month. Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, I can break it down on the show today. I can break it down to, you know, I just wanted to, I don't want to just keep.
Can you, I don't want to steal your thunder, but really, I really would like the guys and everybody listening, you know, to kind of hear about, and we need to get away from things falling to the ground. And I think you've kind of coined the phrase, Knoxy, is, and this is where I think it'd be awesome if you could kind of walk through this, if you're willing, is that we're being pushed down.
Absolutely. Right. So one thing.
Well, I've seen the gravity. Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, sorry. Go ahead. But the Slinky experiment seemed to back that up over and over again, as you see it being pushed into itself before the whole thing falls.
You're about to get Arwen overly excited now.
That's what I was going to say.
You mentioned. Should we call it downward acceleration force just for Arwen, or
DAF for short?
Hey guys, there's one thing I wanted to say. John was talking about Einstein and Flat Earth Society and upward movement. I've never understood that because gravity, as it's purported, is an acceleration. And the Flat Earth Society always purport that the Earth is moving up at a rate of 9.8 meters per second, which is different to an acceleration, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's a constant upward movement at a rate of 9.8.
It would be a rate, not an acceleration. Exactly.
Yeah. Otherwise, the Earth can't be accelerating upwards. Otherwise, it would have already reached some impossible speeds, wouldn't it? So another debunk of their fraudulent.
I think the premise is that the old nonsense they spew about Einstein's theory that if you fall over and hit your head on the pavement, it's equally as likely that the pavement jumped up and smacked you in the head, along that sort of along those sort of concepts. So yeah, it's ridiculous either way.
Yeah, but I think even as like flat earthers who don't believe in gravity, right? We've still been so indoctrinated by school and by the system to think that there's actually something pushing us, pulling us down when we're actually being pushed. And I'll explain it. So first off, we need to understand, we need to all agree on that all air is fluid. Like that's a fact. It's not a flat earth thing. Air is fluid, and not to be confused with liquid, right? Because liquid, some globers will be like, no, liquid, solid, gas, three states of matter. No, I didn't say liquid. I said fluid. Totally different, right? Not totally different, but water can be liquid, gas can be liquid, right? And also plasma.
Yeah.
And I meant fluid. All fluids are governed by fluid dynamics, right? So if the air around us is fluid, right, then we are constantly inside of fluid. The same force that pushes a bubble up from underwater, which is buoyancy, the same force that makes a helium balloon rise in the air, right? Buoyancy. Follow me so far, right?
Yep.
And it's also the same force. If you blow a balloon full of your breath, that balloon will fall to the ground. It's the exact same force of buoyancy, but it's buoyancy in the opposite direction, right? And here's how I came to this realization. This is what got me to thinking of this. So I'm doing this documentary, and we are, working with these helium balloons or whatever, right? Are these anti-gravity? No, they can't be anti-gravity. What makes a helium balloon rise? They tell you gravity's going down and it pushes up on the less dense object and causes it to rise, right? So I'm filming this helium balloon. So now I'm going back to edit the footage. And when I play it back, I see the helium balloon fall and bounce instead of rise. I'm like, wait, I remember recording this thing rising. Why is it falling? Come to find out, I have a monitor that flips everything upside down if you press a button. So it looked like it was falling. And I was like, wait a minute. It looked exactly the same. Like it bounced just like it would if it was falling, but it was really rising. I just had the monitor turned upside down. I said, those forces look exactly the same. Wow. So I proposed, you know what I mean? So I proposed to the guys, like, what if there's nothing pulling us down? What if we are in fluid?
Oops.
Uh-oh, he said too much truth. We've lost you, brother.
Hold on, Knoxy, you cut out for a second.
Can you hear me? Yeah, someone tried to call my phone. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, no, you're back. Go ahead. Sorry.
We got to what if we're in a
Yeah. So what if buoyancy is in fact the force that separates an object from a fluid, and it works in both directions, not one, up and down, right? So it's not that it's anything pulling us down. We're not being pulled to the earth. Buoyancy actually causes an object to separate from a fluid, or two fluids to separate from each other, right? And the difference in density determines how much force is used in that separation, right? The difference in density, and that difference is interpreted as weight. That's why I can weigh 200 pounds, right, inside of air. But as soon as I get in the water, why does my weight change? My mass didn't change at all, but my weight changed, because the difference in density between me and water is not that much. It's about, now I have 30%, 70% less weight, right? Because now I'm in water. I'm inside of a different fluid. And I think our bodies are about 70% water. Therefore, my weight will change. My mass is the same, right? Because buoyancy is the force that separates. It's the force of separation. So the force doesn't come from the earth. It comes from between the objects themselves.
Interesting. Really interesting.
So this is so mind-blowing. The fact that you discovered it completely by accident, by the monitor being turned upside down, is one of those kinds of things I love. I love those kind of synchronicities, man. That is brilliant.
Knoxy,
And
can you
then
go
this
through
reminds
the...
me of the whole, one of those experiments I used to do as a kid where I can't remember exactly what it was, and it's been too long ago, but you put stuff in a bottle in a certain way, and you squeeze the bottle, and what's in the bottle drops to the bottom of the bottle because of the pressure you've applied. So if we're in layers and there's a lot more liquid above us, and that's applying pressure down on this.
You just described the latest experiment.
Oh, really? See, you've got my mind just racing, man. I'm loving this. Go, go, go. You're the guest. I'm going to shut up.
Oh, no, it's cool, man. No, me and Paul were just talking about the experiment. Was it like Tuesday? Was it Tuesday, Paul? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it was right before or after our show. You were telling me about this. So, yeah, go ahead.
I didn't know that was an experiment. So, how I approached this
kid
thing...
doing that, man, for long ago, many 40 plus years ago. So, yeah, amazing. Oh, man, I love this.
That's so cool. No, so how I try to approach these things is I try to free my mind of everything that I know. That's the only way I can do these experiments without any any kind of bias, you know. So you hold the bottle and you're talking about, and you have like the beads or whatever you have in it, right? I had this bottle full of water, and when I applied pressure to it, they started to sink, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Absolutely. It's some kind of diver experiment. Man, it's coming. I'm tickling it. It's coming up. I'll tickle it out of the depths.
Okay. Well, what's happening is every how can I say it? Every fluid has like a field energy, right? Every liquid, every object has like a field energy, a frequency that it gives off, right? And it basically it's basically the identity of its density, should I say, right? So you would think if you add pressure to this bottle of water, that it will make the water more dense, right? So things should float even more on it. But why do they sink? And that's because I believe, and I'm still experimenting with it, but I believe that you adding that pressure, now pressure creates heat. Heat causes molecules to move a little faster, right? So if molecules are moving faster, then that means that the frequency of that water, it has to change. And once that information changes, then that tells those beads or whatever you're using to drop down, because it's not so much the density of it, it's the information of the fluid that's given off. It's like, for instance, like when you have bees that can fly, when we were kids, we were told like bees shouldn't be able to fly, but for some reason they can. Well, that's because bees have like this hollow cavity inside of their, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, inside of, I think it's like their thorax or something. And when their wings flap, it causes a vibration. It's all frequency. It causes a vibration, and it changes the information around them. It reads as it's lighter than the air around it. So they're not even pushing off of the air. They're actually levitating, right? Because they've changed the information around them. They've changed their frequency. And that's why it's been so hard for people to try to create the perfect ideal floating car or floating machine, because you're trying to fight against gravity, but you're fighting against something that doesn't exist.
I love it.
Yeah. So
it seems like it was something I did with an eyedropper and maybe a ketchup bottle. I don't know. Maybe if I go look it up, that might be a great idea.
Could I
make
an uninformed addition to that? I mean, you talk about bees, and it probably relates. I mean, what you're saying is different. It relates in terms of the directional force, or the direction of the force, is that the bees are interfering with the electromagnetic information, however you want to call it, which is the thing that they're then altering to allow the, I hate the phrase, anti-gravity effect that they generate, or the separating from buoyancy. That's how I understood it. A little bit like the hover plates. I forget the guy's name, but it's that electromagnetic change that allows the movement.
Now, I think that that kind of change, I think you can alter the electromagnetivity of an object, but I want to tell you about this one experiment that I did. So when I proposed this theory to the guys, they said, well, that doesn't make sense. If there's a definite force of separation between an object and a fluid, right? Like, so say if I have a bubble underwater, say it's a few pounds of pressure, right? Then that means it should work in the opposite way. So what we did, I know it sounds a little confusing, but hear me out. So what we did is basically figured out that a gallon of water, say that it weighs about 8 pounds in our air fluid that we're in right now, right? Gallon of water, 8 pounds, roughly. Not exactly, but roughly, right? So if what I'm saying is correct, then a gallon of air should weigh 8 pounds underwater, but in the opposite direction, right? And that's the experiment we did. And come to find out, it does the exact same amount in the opposite direction. No matter how much more water you put in that tank, that empty gallon of air weighs 8 pounds of lift in the opposite direction, right?
Do you measure that by having to apply 8 pounds of downward force to keep it under the water? That was.
No. We made a rig with a scale. That I'd have to draw it out, but basically it was. So you got the gallon of air inside the tank of water, and it's trying to push up. And we had something like a balance scale.
Yeah.
On the left side where the water's pushing up on it, and outside there was a weight scale on the table. It's kind of hard to visualize.
Did you video it, film it?
Yeah. This is all going in.
It if it's not overly lengthy, if you wanted to.
It's all in my editing block right now.
I got you.
Yeah,
well, what I was looking up the experiment. It's called in the physics world the Cartesian diver, and there are different ways to do it. Sealing up a straw, you can do it with a ketchup packet inside of a bottle. I remember doing it with an eyedropper that you got just enough to float just right and squeezed whatever. Maybe it was a shampoo bottle. I don't remember. But their explanation of why this all happens is that it contains an air bubble sealed inside. So the combined density of the object with the air inside. Wait, where is it? I scrolled too fast. When you squeeze the sides of the bottle, you increase the pressure, pushing on the air bubble, making it compress into a smaller space. This decrease in volume causes the air bubble to increase in density. Therefore, the overall density of the straw diver will now be greater than that of the surrounding water, making it sink, release it, and it returns. I don't know about that.
I don't know, man. Like, it's like they tell you, remember that, hey, Paul, remember that experiment we were talking about that we all did as kids and we didn't even realize we were experimenting? Like, if you take a cup of water, right? I mean, not a cup of water, just an empty cup, and you turn it upside down and you put it into a container of water, it maintains its air inside. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah. Yep, absolutely. Do it like in the sink or whatever.
Anybody can do it, right? But the thing is, okay, if buoyancy is supposedly working from these fluids, from when water is going around and then pushing up on an object, how come it can't go up inside that space? And someone will say something like, oh, it's because of the pressure. The pressure doesn't allow, for the water to be able to come up and push bubbles out. Okay, let's keep that, empty container underwater and poke a hole in the side. Oh, now the water can come in. What's the difference? That's because buoyancy only respects the z-axis. That's the up and down, right? And here's the thing. Now you talk about who are we talking about? Einstein with the upward acceleration, right? Mm-hmm. It's BS. But here's the thing: all objects, this buoyant force, this force of separation, accelerates, or should I say, it moves at a rate of 9.8 meters per second squared in both directions, right? So the only thing that makes an object fall slower than 9.8 meters per second squared is fluid resistance or air resistance, right? So, and it also is the thing that governs objects rising. A helium balloon would actually rise at 9.8 meters per second squared, but the air resistance stops it from going any faster. And what happens when a helium balloon reaches a certain height? Either it explodes or it stops because it reaches light density.
Equilibrium or something, isn't it?
Equilibrium, exactly. And so that's mm-hmm.
Sorry, I was just going to say, Walt, when you're reading out that explanation as to why it does this, did they say basically it was because there was an air gap in the top?
Right, and when you squeeze it, it increases the density of the air bubble inside of the little object that's floating somehow.
Right, because I've just dropped a link in chat and Skype, and it's a classic video by Phuket Word doing that exact experiment, the Cartesian experiment, but he hasn't got an air bubble at the top, as far as I can see. It's filled to the brim with water. So
right.
That might throw.
It's the gap of air in the object, I think, more than the air. I don't know. Maybe it would be.
I don't know. I think it's like you're saying. It's increasing the pressure on the water itself. It's changing its frequency.
Changing its frequency and the heat, like Knoxy was talking about.
Yeah. I think that's awesome.
I mean, think about the star in the jar phenomena. That's pure pressure on. Oh, dude, that was one of my aha moments early on in this whole thing.
The way I understood the Cartesian diver test, so maybe I can shout out, mate, is that it's in equilibrium at standard room temperature and pressure, and by manipulating the air pressure which sits above the water, you increase that, and in doing so, you increase the downward force on the diver, and that makes him go down because he's increased upon. That was my kind of basic understanding. You increase the air pressure above, which is what elicits the force down.
Would this not mean, Knoxy, that, I mean, obviously barometric pressure around us, if that's the right word, I'm winging it, but
absolutely,
you know, on the plane, the pressure changes; it goes up and down. So shouldn't it sort of be reflected in our weight?
Shouldn't it be reflected? You mean what you said on the plane, or are you talking about when you're not talking about an airplane? You're talking about the plane
on the plane that we live on. But say I weighed myself on the side of a swimming pool. If I weighed myself on the concrete and I was 10 stone, say, and then I jumped in the swimming pool with the scales, and I weighed, I don't know, what, 6 stone or something. Wouldn't our sort of weights vary throughout with the pressure changing around us?
I think it would change on a very minute scale. Because if you think about, I mean, the pressure we're talking about here on this plane, like it might vary a little bit, but just slightly. Like you would need a really, really sensitive scale to detect like the difference in weight change. You know what I mean? Like just because our density, the difference in density between us and the air around us is so huge that it will be really hard to detect. It's like once you pass something that I call the buoyancy threshold, it's really hard to detect changing weight. For instance, you know how you can drop a bowling ball from like the Empire State Building, and it will like probably immediately hit like 9.8 meters per second squared. Like it will hit free fall pretty fast.
Mm-hmm.
You can drop, let's say, maybe a balloon, it won't hit that speed at all. You know, but you drop a basketball, it will, right? The basketball will hit 9.8 meters per second squared. But what'll happen if you drop a really dense brick underwater? It might be able to reach that speed, right? But you can't do that with a basketball. The basketball will float on top of water because the density of the basketball is way less than the density of water. So it's nowhere near that threshold, right? You fill that basketball with water, now it can sink. It might float a little bit, you know what I mean? But it'll sink a little bit below because of the weight of the rubber around the basketball. So it's pretty much subjective to when you talk about the difference in density between the object and the fluid, you know.
Knoxy, can I pick your brains again on that? John,
Yeah,
John,
sure.
what John was just alluding to there, and what you hear a lot of the kind of bullshit gravity experiments is in relation to weight is if I weigh myself at sea level, I weigh this much. If I go to the top of Mount Everest, where the air pressure is less, I weigh a very small amount, an almost indistinguishable amount less. Now, that would suggest to me that what you're suggesting in terms of air pressure is the variant in the weight. I mean, weight's nonsense. There's only mass. In reality, you know what I mean? But that's the variance in weight is what you might suggest in there in terms of air pressure from low down to, or where there is variance in air pressure, that would affect a slight variance in weight. Would you agree? Or does the air pressure negated by the force it applies to the scales itself? So does that balance out?
Well, let me tell you, I was just having that conversation with Paul, and I'm so glad you asked that question because I totally forgot about it. This is the last experiment we were working on, right? So they'll tell you because you're on a mountain and you're higher that you're going to weigh slightly less because you're further away from the earth and it should be less of a gravitational pull, correct? Come to find out, when doing this experiment, we need to do it again with a more sensitive scale. But not only do you not weigh less, but you weigh more the higher you go, right? So I think a lot of these things that we've come to believe are just theories that they assume to be correct because they assume that gravity is real. Because the tests I've done shows that you weigh a little bit more when you're higher up on these mountains, just slightly. So, like I said, we need to run another test, but it's looking promising.
So does that qualify the statement you were saying earlier that the density and buoyancy difference between a human and the air, or whatever you're weighing, solid object in the air, is the negated? That's just ignorant, worth ignoring, and it literally is the difference in the air pressure of being applied to the scales that you measure.
Yeah, the difference in density, right? So, say our air. I'm just going to just throw some random numbers out here, right? Say our air has a value of 1, right? +1. And water has a density value of 16, right? The difference between them would be 15, right? So that's 15 units of difference. Whereas helium, say helium has like a -2 and air has a 1. It has an absolute value difference of 3, right? So it's a smaller difference between air and helium, but of course helium goes in the opposite direction because it has that negative value towards it. So basically, yeah, difference in density. And when you go higher, the air is less dense, right? So what we consider to be less dense air has a stronger buoyant value, but a downward buoyant value. And I have to go back to what's that experiment? The Michelson-Morley experiment. We all know about that, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Just making sure. I just didn't want to just start spewing out experiments and nobody's looked into it, But the Michelson-Morley experiment is when everybody, they knew it was ether. It had to be something called ether out there. And they were doing the experiment with light to prove that the ether existed, right? Because they know that when you're moving an object, the light seems to slow down or, go along with some kind of rate because the ether or whatever. So they did the experiment and it didn't work. It didn't work the way they wanted it to. And they came to a conclusion: either the earth is not moving or there is no ether, right? So of course they're going to say the earth is moving. So they had to get rid of ether, but the ether does exist and it has the negative buoyant value. That's why when you and sorry if I'm just going on a rant here.
No, you carry on, mate. I'm fascinated.
Keep the right spot.
Yes,
Don't
ether.
start ranting because I've got another question in a minute. So carry on, Knoxy.
Okay. So one question people ask me all the time is okay, if your theory is true, then how come if you look at the vacuum experiment, how come the bowling ball and the feather fall at the same speed, inside of a vacuum? That doesn't make any sense. It makes perfect sense because first of all, you can't have a complete vacuum. It works on paper, but in reality, there's no such thing as a 100% vacuum, or else the container would implode on itself. You can't have nothing.
That's another one, Knoxy, isn't it? The bowling ball and the feather. For me, when that was one pre-flat Earth that did my head in, because if there's nothing impeding it, then the rate of fall should be relative also to the relative masses of the two things. So there should be a slightly greater attraction between the center of the Earth and that bowling ball, and the center of the Earth and that feather. So the rate of the downward force should be greater between the bowling ball and the center as opposed to the bit and the feather.
Right. But it also comes to that thing I was telling you about, is the buoyancy threshold. Once you pass a certain difference in density, it doesn't matter the weight of the object. They all fall at the same speed. Once your difference is high enough, right, they will all fall or rise at the same speed. Now, so the reason why the feather can now fall at the same rate with the bowling ball is, number one, you have a fluid with less viscosity. You get rid of the oxygen. Now the viscosity is like pretty much almost zero, right? The only fluid I know of with a viscosity of zero, it's probably many more, but helium has like almost no viscosity, right? So things can fall through it without any kind of resistance. Same thing within a vacuum, but that downward buoyant force is pushing with more, a bigger difference than it was when it's floating through oxygen fluid, through air fluid. So now the feather can pass the buoyancy threshold and fall at 9.8 meters per second squared, just like the bowling ball. But it won't go any faster unless you apply extra force to it, extra downward force.
But does anyone remember the documentary from the 90s, I think it was, with a Welsh presenter about the moon landings, and them doing the hammer and feather trick on the non-moon, and then they recreated it in their London studio, as they said, and the hammer and the feather fell at the same rate in the studio as well. I mean, that to me was sort of a sort of slam
dunk. That made them go out in the yard and do that experiment, John. Yeah.
That's right. I mean, I think that needs to be done again properly, just to put a headstone on this, because it's, I don't know now what to believe. Or I shouldn't believe anything. I'm going to go and try it.
I think it's on my channel.
It's crazy. And if you think about it, right? So we know that we have this electromagnetic charge in our Earth or whatever. And, the NASA, whoever, our geographers, our top science guys will tell us that, the magnetic pull of our Earth or whatever is caused by, the nickel and iron, all that stuff, the molten steels and metals like inside our Earth's core, spinning around at some kind of speed or whatever. And it's just this huge magnetic field that it causes. But what they don't tell you is that once a magnet reaches a certain heat, right, it loses its magnetic properties.
The Curry temperature, isn't it?
Yeah. Right? Yeah. Molten metals have no magnetism, right? So
whilst we're on that, Knoxy, sorry to interrupt. Walt,
you've
been in touch with Anthony? I've seen him in the chat. Have you got it sorted?
I am multitasking in so many ways. Let me go double check. It had not dropped at the last. Hang on.
Hot topic at Knoxy that's been on Nathan's show is one of
I have it. It is here. Give me 1 second.
Sorry to interrupt there. I just didn't want to be rude to Riley. He's got us a scoop, apparently.
It seems like it was processing minutes ago. Let me double check again.
Where were you, Knoxy? Sorry.
Oh, yeah. So I was saying that molten metals, lose their magnetic properties, right? Because people think that magnets just pull things in because they're magnets. They just have this direct pull. It's actually a field around the magnets. If you take something like I do this on a video as well. I talk about magnetism a little bit, but I don't want to, put too much of it in because I don't want to confuse people with too much crap or whatever. But if you take iron filings, like iron dust pretty much, and it's an experiment I did when I was a kid. Take a magnet, any kind of magnet, and you put like a sheet of paper over it, any kind of paper will do, and you drop these iron filings on top of the paper, it'll immediately form into the shape of the magnetic field, right? Mm-hmm. Like these, weird looking circular shapes or whatever. And if you take like a disc magnet, and say if you take like a screwdriver and you try to put the screwdriver where you want on the magnet, you can't. It just goes onto certain parts of the magnet, right? Because it follows a field. So the magnet, I mean, that's something you can try at home, because magnets don't just pull things in. They they make things align, certain metals align with their field, or certain elements align with their field, you know, and that's why you can't put
That's right. I've got a couple of neodymium magnets or whatever that I use in my shed, and they will only work in one configuration. They clamp on like limpets, but if you turn the magnet around, it's a very weak pull. If you put it on the sides, it's a very weak pull. It's only in this one configuration. So yeah, I know what you're talking about there.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff though. And when I say like you know, there's no gravity. It's buoyancy, and buoyancy is basically the force of separation, separating objects from fluids. So it's hard for people to understand that because we are down here, like we were born down here, like, you know, grounded, right? It's like we've heard what goes up must come down, right? You got a helium balloon rises, and you know a little while later it's going to come back down, right? But what's different about that helium balloon? It's a lot less helium in it when it comes back down, right? The helium's gone, but the balloon comes back down. It's because the balloon is more dense than the air around it, not the helium. So there's a little I want to break something down real quick if you guys don't mind. It's a little analogy I have called human A and human B, right? Now,
go ahead.
Say we're human A, right? Made of all the things that we're made of, water, carbon, you know, whatever. We got iron in our blood, whatever, right? And we are down here. You know, we weigh 100 pounds, 200 pounds, whatever we are. We are down here. We've been down here all our life. So we base everything on what's pulling me down, right? Now let's take human B. Human B is made of something totally different. He's a light being. He breathes helium, right? Or maybe he breathes hydrogen, something lighter than helium, right? He's made of all the things that are lighter than air, right? But he's still a physical being. And we let human B go. What happens? He flies straight up into the sky, right? Nonstop. Maybe he gets to reach 9.8 meters per second squared because he's broken that buoyancy threshold, right? So he's skyrocketing, and say he hits a ceiling, right? He hits that ceiling. Now, if he doesn't die, he can stand up, right? He'll stand up, and he'll be upside down. But for him, it'll end up being right side up. Once he stands up on that ceiling, he'll be able to look up and he'll see us or whatever. And then now that will be his ground. That ceiling is now his floor. He's standing on it, right? So, but he knows he came from where we are. So let's say human B has children, and they grow up on that ceiling, but to them it's upright. They're standing up, right? They're going to think that there's something pulling them down to that ceiling, right? It's because they were born there. We are basing the idea of something pulling us down on our perception of what we've experienced all our life. We always experience a downward force because we've always been more dense than the air around us, right? So it's our ignorance kind of that makes us perceive the world this way, when really it's just objects separating from the fluids around them all the time. We don't have anything. How much does a bowling ball weigh? Like 8 pounds? I don't know, 10 pounds. We don't have anything as small as a bowling ball with that type of negative weight, with that type of lift. If we did, we would be able to shoot up in the sky at 9.8 meters per second squared, right? Because there's a constant on the z-axis, and it moves at 9.8 meters per second squared. That's what.
Uh-oh.
About that, guys. I blanked out for a second. Can you hear me?
You're a popular guy. It's all right.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, guys. Yeah.
No. Okay.
But you know, when you're on an airplane, right, and the airplane goes into free fall, right? What happens? Everything starts floating. Buoyancy will reach zero because the buoyancy constant moves at 9.8 meters per second squared. Once you catch up to that in either direction, all objects inside, the buoyancy goes to zero. And what happens if the plane goes faster? You start rising higher. Then your buoyancy reverses, right? So if you're on something like the Vomit Comet, it goes down for a little bit and people float. Then when it goes up, it decelerates and people will float because it's the same exact force going up. They just have to do the opposite thing, right? So, yeah, this is just like a few of the, tests and things that we run through on the video. So
It just all sounds like common sense, really, when you put it that sort of way. I mean, it's just my experience of heliocentrism is overcomplicating everything to the extreme. But when in reality, if it's just explained normally, it really does come down to sort of common sense.
Yeah, I think so too, man. And it's like gravity. They have all these equations for gravity, right? Just, you got to use a different gravitational equation for everything you do, when in fact, they've separated gravity equation from the buoyancy equation, but it's one equation that can tell you what rises and what falls. You don't need a buoyancy equation separated from the equation that tells you why things go down. You don't need it. They just made it because they couldn't understand what was going on, I think. I don't think they were trying to lie to us. I just think they didn't understand it. And everybody needs an answer. Everyone needs to say, well, why does the moon go around the Earth then if there's no gravity? Why do the tides do this and that if there's no gravity? There's plenty of different...
I think that's a great point you made, Knoxy, with human A and B. Mm-hmm. It's a conceptual thing that we're... an arrogance of conceptualization that because we are what we are, then also act on everything else just like it acts on us. It's a really interesting. I've never heard it broached like that before, man. It's a really good point.
Yeah, man.
It took a bit of chewing as well on my brain, but yeah,
it's just something that because it really bothered me, because when we couldn't detect gravitons and all this other stuff, and I said, well, how do we know? And I was looking up Newton's notes, trying to figure out like his approach. Come to find out, he didn't even really believe in gravity that much. He's like, he basically, to paraphrase, he's like, hey, I'm not sure if the Earth is really pulling us or not. I just threw it out there. And I wouldn't run with it if I were you guys. Like, that's kind of how he put it. I can't, I don't have the document in front of me, but he's pretty much saying like he wasn't even the hugest believer in Earth's gravitational pull. It's just a concept he came up with. And everybody ran with it because it fit the heliocentric model.
That's right. He did. Yeah, you're right. He said, this is an entire theory, and please don't ascribe my name to it. I mean, he actually says at the end, I think he uses the word absurdity or nonsense or something. And that was talking about the sort of action at a distance, gravity, and you're right, he wasn't a fan of it, but try telling people that now.
Right. So someone in the chat was asking, how can you prove that the acceleration is 9.8 meters per second squared?
I was going to bring that question up. Thank you, sir.
Good stuff. Oh, my bad. Did you want to go?
Oh, no, you found that question and hit it up. Go right ahead, please.
No, what wanted you to answer it, Knoxy?
Oh, okay.
Darwin's one of the
Jesus Christ.
Flat Earthers that still he purports it still to be a force. So if you look at Darwin's comments, I think it's with that concept in mind still as he's talking. I think I don't want to speak for Darwin. I'm just trying to put it in a bit of context, but I think Darwin still conceptualized it as a downward acceleration force. I'm not sure where the force is coming from, but that's how he described it. So I think that's probably I think 9.8. We all did it A-level physics class. You are able to measure that downward acceleration. That's where the formulas come from. That daft experiment where you drop in ball bearings and timing, the different rates as I go back 30 odd years. Do you know what I mean? So I don't think there's an issue in measuring the 9.8, is it? It's quantifying where it's coming from and what's causing it is the issue.
Right. And here's how you know it doesn't come from the pull of the Earth. Okay, so you can tell in the vacuum, right? So you've gotten rid of the resistance. You've got like almost zero viscosity, and you have your objects falling at 9.8 meters per second squared, right? But when you try to have an object rise at that speed, you can't, because how do you create an experiment, right, where you have something that is lighter than air, but light enough? I shouldn't even use the word light, but has enough negative weight, right, to be able to break that buoyancy threshold. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, because helium and air don't have that much of a difference in density, right? So it's not gonna move up too fast, right? Hydrogen and air, they have a bigger difference, but it's not big enough, right? So the only way to do that experiment is to take a really dense fluid, right? But most dense fluids aren't transparent, right? So you can't see it happening. So you need another way to measure it. You take a dense fluid, and then you take something really, really not dense at all, like I don't know, it's like maybe like a foam ball or something, right? And like so say you took like liquid mercury, something really dense, a really dense fluid, and then you took a foam ball and put it under that liquid mercury. Now you need a lot of liquid mercury, though. You need like a freaking pool, a swimming pool full of it or something, you know, and you could let that foam ball go, and maybe it'd have enough difference in density to shoot up at 9.8 meters per second squared. But what's the problem? You still have that resistance because liquid mercury is very viscous, and it's hard for things to pass through it freely because it's so viscous. So that's why it's a thing that's so hard to observe, but it should still be respected because it's for the simple fact that gallon of water is 8 pounds and a gallon of air underwater is 8 pounds in negative weight.
Our buddy Ace McLeod there in chat just dropped dielectric acceleration into chat. Interesting idea.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, so we talking about dielectric, talking about magnetism. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'll just drop the link in there from the Newton project regarding what he said about gravity and wanting nothing to do with it. And yeah,
is that what he said before or after?
That's more of that spooky motion at distance type stuff.
Sorry, Adam.
I just wondered if that was one of the statements that he made before or after he died.
I'm not entirely sure, but he said the growth of a new system out of old ones without the mediation of a divine power seems to me to be absurd. But yeah, I don't know if you guys can see it or not.
Let me look.
Where is it? It comes from original letter from Newton to Bentley. Yeah, actually, I'll bung it in the Skype chat there. I think it's the third chapter, third paragraph down. Starts, the second seems not so clear. For it may be said that there might be other systems of worlds before the present ones, and others before those, and so on, to all past eternity, and by consequence that gravity might be... Yeah, I'm going to shut up now because I'm not sure I've got the right one there.
I was just reading a note there, John, Tony's, I think him and Alan are having a bit of a discussion, we'll call it, but I think he's turned into a Jedi because he says, may the displacement be with you.
Love it.
That's a killer topic.
So speaking of links in the chat of Skype, I dropped that link that our buddy Sleeping Warrior gave us to, it's an exclusive that's going to be released on his channel over there, which if you haven't gone over to Sleeping Warrior, as soon as this show's over, head over there, check out his stuff, subscribe, like, hit that notification button. Do that while you're here too. Thank you everybody that's in chat. We're loving it, loving all those thumbs up, loving all the interaction. If we're going to come up on a break, I also dropped my gravity video. I think that's where I used the hammer drop.
I've already got your gravity video pulled up.
Well, man.
I might be the one that you beard from Vagabond's channel. Did you both?
No, I don't know. If somebody else dropped the Vagabond, maybe. That might be Adams. Yeah, I was trying to find my hammer experiment that I did out in the yard with my son, and I can't find it. But I do remember using it in this video towards the end, probably somewhere after the Mount Muru map from Mercator. Yep, that's exactly where it is. Wow, that's been a long time ago, and I remember way too much about building this video. Anyway, so yeah, there's all the links I gave you in chat, Josh. Yeah.
Sorry, Josh. Yeah, sorry everyone. I had the wrong paragraph. It was the following paragraph that started, "'Tis inconceivable." Is there any way you could read that, Josh? As only you can, because I have just demonstrated I certainly can't.
I think I can, because I have 2 Skypes open.
Pull my Alex over.
Is that a can or a can't? You want to grab it?
That is a can. I do have it.
Good stuff. And this is a letter from Isaac Newton to Richard Bentley. Sorry, Zach.
All right, Zach's back. Everybody start over.
Was that good meal, Zach?
Oh, it was excellent. I even brought a couple pieces of chicken home for Hank, and he had his chicken nuggets.
Are you hungry again yet?
Not just yet. I'm getting there, though. I could eat every couple hours, no problem.
Are you nice to the rice?
Oh, yeah. I was very nice to the rice. I thanked it for taking the sacrifice that it made to allow me to nourish myself and keep going. Yeah, I've learned to thank everything. When I say grace now, I don't so much thank the Creator. I mean, the Creator knows I'm thankful. I more or less try to thank the things that I'm getting ready to consume. Tell them that it wasn't in vain. They're lost. You know, that I appreciate it and it's going to a good use. And if they want to stay a part of my body, their spirit and their souls, they're more than welcome. Join in on this journey that I'm going on. Yeah, I know it sounds crazy and weird, but yeah.
It does not.
Right?
It sounds amazing. Hashtag Zachness. That's what that is, brother. Hashtag Zachness.
You F my head up on an almost daily basis, Zach. I love it.
Just doing what I can.
Well, this is awesome because Knoxy's doing his best to keep up with you because he's been here this whole show so far, just fucking with
breaking my brain for sure. I'm so glad you're here, Knoxy.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. I saw someone in the chat room asking about dielectric force or something like that. What are they saying?
It was
that was my question.
Ross Thatcher, I believe. Yeah.
Ace McCloud, I think.
So.
Oh right, yes, Ace. Right, I was backing up too quickly. That is Ace.
Okay, yeah. So one thing I wanted to say about that, because many flat earthers believe that it is electromagnetism holding us down. Once again, I have to force, for lack of a better word, the issue that there's nothing pulling on us, nothing pulling us down. We're just being separated from the fluid around us, the air fluid around us. And the reason we know that it's not electromagnetism, which is pulling us down, is because the speed of electromagnetism, which moves at 3 times 10 to the 8th meters per second, which is extremely fast. 3 times 10 to the 8th is like freaking light speed, and objects in the vacuum would probably fall at that speed, and that'd be totally insane. So, I mean, that's one way that we know that it's not. Now, don't get me wrong. The Earth definitely does have a dielectric magnetic field, but that's not the thing that's keeping us grounded. At least not in my findings. I'm not, the authority on this or anything. It's just what I've been experimenting with and discovering is that it is definitely the force of separation. And me and Paul, we have a certain term for that. We'll be releasing it or whatever, but yeah, it's pretty cool.
Ooh, a new term. We like the sound of that. We
always like
try and coin a few ourselves.
Vocabulation.
Come on, Hank.
But you know why though? You have to come up with a new term because when you try to talk to people, right, and you tell them, "Oh no, it's buoyancy. It's buoyancy is the reason why we're rising and falling." The first thing they want to do is bring up some freaking equation, right? And they say, "Here, see, G is gravity. You can't have any kind of buoyancy without gravity." Wrong. G. They call it the acceleration due to gravity, but their definition is wrong. It's an acceleration, but it's not due to gravity. G is simply 9.8 meters per second squared. I'm sorry.
They have hijacked the nomenclature. They write the dictionaries, they put words in, they take words out. They have weaponized words like gravity, density, buoyancy, conspiracy, you name it. So it is up to us to come up with our own words for this and back it up with facts and science. And I'm all for that. Get rid of all their crappy words that have baggage coming with them.
Yeah,
I think we talked about this before, Knoxy. After you guys did the interview with me on your guys' show.
And we had a nice talk.
Yeah, to me, it's just all electricity. It's just the electric field and the way that it's flowing. And that's where we get our up and down. It's because there's a positive above us and a negative below us. And that's just the way that electricity moves. It goes from a positive.
That's what I was going to say, Zach. That it's a directional thing that it gives, not necessarily a force of movement, but it orientates the direction that something of less buoyancy goes this way and something of more buoyancy goes that way. That's always my basic understanding.
And I think hydrogen rises because it has a negative charge, the most negative charge of all the charges. So therefore, it doesn't want to be near the ground, which is negative. It wants to go up towards the sky, which is positive.
But I think what Knoxy's sort of saying as well is that it depends on what medium you're in, whether you're in it or the pressure of that medium. Is that right, Knoxy? Or
not so much the pressure, but the we call it pretty much the superior number. So, for instance, if you're in water, right, and like we're just for this show, we're going to say water has a superior number of 16. No matter how much water you put in that tank, you can add more water. Whatever's floating up in it is going to still have that same amount of negative weight. Like, so if the empty gallon of air weighs 8 pounds, it's going to keep constantly weigh 8 pounds. You can keep adding more water into the pool, and you got a 2-ton pool or whatever. It doesn't matter. That gallon of air is going to weigh 8 pounds of negative weight because it's the force of separation. It's separating in a different direction. It's going to separate upwards until it reaches the surface. And what happens? It reaches the surface and it stops rising, right? But a little bit of that container will be underwater because the weight of the plastic, right? But otherwise, it's joined. It's found its level. It's found its common density. Now, if you have a helium balloon underwater, what happens? It rises up past the water and it keeps rising up through the air fluid until it gets to a certain height. Then it levels out because it's with like density, because they have the same field information. They have the same they have the same superior number, right? So yeah, that's pretty much how I look at it. It's the force of separation until it reaches like density.
Paul, you've been very quiet on this. You got anything to add? Is he still there?
Well, I couldn't have said it better than the guy that's been doing all the research. I've been lucky enough to kind of be a little bit on the journey, and I was lucky enough to have him ask me to do one of the experiments. So I don't want to spoil it too much, Knoxy, cool. But I took my slinky and I took it into my swimming pool and did some filming to kind of see make some observations there. But what I think and where this is going, I'm speculating. This is obviously just based on what I'm learning and what I'm hearing. When it comes to electromagnetism and buoyancy and these forces that we're talking about, I think there's something to the effect that everything has this frequency that it's going, that there's a frequency going through everything. Whether it's the earth that creates it or if it's naturally occurring in every object, whatever that is. And so when we can figure out how to, maybe we can figure it out already, but when we learn the different frequencies that are needed based on the object to change that force that is wanting to separate it from the fluid it's contained in, we're going to be finding, I think, that's where we're going to find the ability to levitate and things of that nature. And maybe that goes to some of the super secret experiments that have been going on by governments of the world and been able to do that. But I think that's where this is headed. And it kind of comes back to the bumblebee, like we talk about a lot, is that it has found a way, or it has the ability to change the frequency either of its own body, or maybe it's changing the frequency that's running through the air that's immediately surrounding it. And that is changing the buoyant forces that it's subject to. And I think there's some secrets there for us to discover.
Wow. That seems like we're sort of resetting the page on looking at things like anti-gravity devices and that sort of thing. You guys probably familiar with the way it's been described of rotating mercury, liquid mercury, to create a gyroscopic effect. Or do you guys know anything about that?
No, please enlighten me.
Oh God, no! That was what I was looking for, enlightenment. Well, apparently it was coming from the sort of Nazi Bell sort of era. It's been a well-known sort of using magnetism, obviously, in a liquid metal, and it's rotating hugely fast to create a rotor sort of effect, and it was changing the air around it, or the properties of the air around it, which is why these craft, if they exist, could do sort of 90-degree turns without splatting the people inside it against the side of the wall and this sort of thing. If anyone knows anything about that, then take it up from here. But I can't go into any more detail than my bad recollection.
That sounds.
I'm sure all of you have seen the honeycomb pattern on the inside of the scarab beetle shell.
Absolutely, I was thinking the same thing.
And how when it's set at certain frequencies, it creates almost a field around an object that is like it's almost impervious to every other field. It kind of, they say a gentleman created a device that could do like 1,000 miles an hour and stop on a dime, and there was like no inertia at all.
Wow.
How true that is, I don't know, but
the boxy covered with the wings.
Yeah, the scarab beetle shouldn't even be able to fly, kind of like the bee, but it has to do with the shape on the inside, and it's a very micro, on a micro scale, very small, but it looks like a bee's honeycomb. And they say that shape has something to do with being able to levitate.
Wow.
Yeah, check that out. It's very, very interesting.
Definitely, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, there's videos of a gentleman taking the scarab like pieces and playing around with them and like making them levitate over each other, and then he apparently created a little platform with some as well, and he like slides little objects across it and it just flips off into the desk area. I'll try to find the video.
Yeah, I've seen that, Walt.
Please do. Yeah, well, but yeah, I had Paul do a really cool experiment that he was just talking about. It was we've talked about the slinky experiment, when you hold on to the slinky and you drop it in air, and the top falls and the bottom like literally does not move. It waits for the top to come down, and when it hits when it collapses, then the whole slinky falls to the bottom. So I called Paul. We called this segment "Paul in the Pool," right? So I was like, Paul, we need to do this experiment underwater because I need to see something, right? So he does the experiment. Came out pretty cool. Same exact thing happens. The only difference is in air, in our air fluid or whatever, when the slinky comes down, there's like, how can I say it? You're holding the slinky. You know how like any movement you do will cause like a little wave, like a worm type wave to go from the top to the bottom. You know what I mean? Like, any kind of
absolutely.
Yeah. So, that, it takes time for it to get to the bottom. But in the pool, when he did the experiment, it fell much slower. The top fell a lot slower. There you go. I see it fall. So it falls much slower, but the wave from the movement of his hands actually went down first. It got to the bottom before the slinky collapsed. And that's another thing that tells me that gravity doesn't exist. What's really happening is, okay, so the slinky is one object, right? One object. And when you release it from the top, that top, what happens? It reaches the that threshold I told you, 9.8 meters per second squared. So it loses buoyant value, right? The buoyancy of that slinky at that moment is zero because it's one object. Even though the top is moving faster than the bottom, it's not being anti-gravitational. It's just possessing zero buoyancy at the moment until it collapses and that inertia hits it, and then it falls to the ground. Same thing happened in the pool, but the wave came down before the slinky collapsed. And what they try to tell you before is that, oh no, it just didn't catch up to the gravity, or just some bull crap explanation they give you. You can't make any gravitational equation that can explain why that really happens.
Yeah, they'll say it's the spring, the force of the spring pulling it up at the exact speed.
I heard that crap.
Yeah, I heard them all. I did this experiment, and you should check it out because I put a couple links in there to other experiments. There's a really neat one where they do it in all different types of fluid, and the last one is corn syrup, and it moves so slow. It's amazing. It's like the thicker the density, the slower it's going to collapse down. But the bottom stayed there until the whole top collapsed on it. Yeah, it was really cool.
Oh, wow. Okay, awesome.
Yeah, so make sure you try it in multiple different densities of liquid.
Oh, we have been.
Oh, yeah, awesome. I can't wait.
It's really cool talking. I mean, this is like the first time besides with Paul that I've really talked to anyone about this. Like I've been like literally like doing this research with just my head in the books and everything. Trying, because the one thing I don't want to do is put out any disinformation based on just wanting to be the first person to put it out. I don't want to be that guy. I wouldn't even probably be talking about this right now if it weren't for Paul. You know what I mean? I was really trying to get it peer reviewed. It's so hard to get a physicist to actually sit down and listen to what I have to say. Once I mention that gravity doesn't exist, they don't want anything to do with me. And I'm like, no, look, I have proof. I have an equation here that works. You can test it. Like you can test it. You can test my equation, right? And it'll work in any situation, any scenario, right? And freaking waves crash and planes fall in freaking vacuum chamber. You name it.
Hold it, Knoxy. Hold on. You've got an equation?
Yes. I have an equation.
I know you do. I was just doing it for effect. So what are what's the defenders of gravity going to do? Because they tell you that their math works. What are they going to do when your math works?
Well, it does work. What are they going to do? They're going to say, show that to a real scientist. But a real scientist will have already proven it to be so. So it doesn't matter what they say. They'll just have to admit that they can't debunk what I'm saying. They'll just hold on to gravity for dear life. And the thing about this, right, is it can be, everything I'm going to show you guys can be tested and repeated, right? We can't test anything that has to do with gravity. Nothing, not one thing. We can't.
All you got to do is go to LIGO, man. Come on, haven't you seen? They've discovered the proof of gravitron waves. Come on, Knoxy.
Dude, yeah, man.
You bring up Lego, Walt. You know what that is? And I'm trying to think who mentioned this on something I was listening to, and I think they're spot on. Oh, it was Bob with Globebusters. That's a huge laser interferometer, just like Michelson Morley. It's a huge one.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Well, how come it doesn't detect the Earth's 66,000 miles an hour around the sun?
Or a truck driving by, or somebody walking.
They factored that in, didn't they? They factored that in. They factored the microwave in the staff canteen in. They factored in the tube train just down the road that was ruining all the results.
So every little lady that even the earthquakes,
down the street, right?
Even all the little teeny earthquakes that we get all the time in this part of the world. Because I live, 20 miles from LIGO, 30 miles from the actual LIGO up here in the state of Washington. All those things don't affect it. All those little vibrations and movements, whatever, don't affect those lasers running down those tubes.
But I think the most important point I took away from talking about LIGO was the moon is claimed to pull billions and trillions of tons of water up and create our tides. How is that not being picked up by LIGO? And the sun infinitely larger than the moon. I mean,
yeah, they're saying that that gravity, and the one time that they did detect something, which was right before they were going to get shut down, they did finally detect a black hole billions of light years away or whatever.
Yeah, but not the moon going around us.
Yeah, so what they're saying is the tube itself that these lasers are running down get affected by gravity. They're actually pulled, so that changes the dimensions, ever so slightly of the tube, and that's what affects the lasers and the speed of the lasers.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, I've
got
sense. A couple of unicorns out the back for sale as well, if anyone's interested.
But when the moon passes overhead, which happens daily, I don't know where you guys live, but the moon typically goes by about once a day. It has no effect on this, on these laser, on these tubes. These lasers are running down. These things are miles long.
Well, that's right. They build these £1 billion, and there's two of them, isn't it? These £1 billion complexes or whatever, and they're set up to measure a couple of black holes colliding billions of light years away, rather than just sort of taking the easy route and let's show us a constant effect of the moon coming around or the sun coming around, and oh look, the gravity goes up, the gravity goes down. No, they can't show us that. They have to show us something that all of us can just pop out and see for ourselves. Black holes colliding billions of miles away, billions of light years away. Crazy bullshit.
And on that note,
don't forget, I've dropped the link to one of the experiments with the Grebennikov, I believe is how it's pronounced. Grebennikov effect.
That was doing my head in. Grebennikov, isn't it? It would be.
Yeah, that's some crazy stuff. It got me looking on eBay to see how to get myself a handful of these beetle shells, and you can actually get a nice amount of them for very little cost, because apparently people use them in making custom jewelry. So I might be playing around with some of those very soon.
Ooh, that'll be fun.
It's as Zach describes. It's like as I remember, it's like a very, very micro honeycomb structure, but instead of the honeycomb structure being hollow, it's like a small pointer. It's that thing that's supposed to create some disruption in the electromagnetic field, as I understand. I'm not sure as that vibrates, whatever it does. There's these very small points within the honeycomb structure that seem to be exerting the effect, as I remember.
That sounds so cool. Need to check that out, definitely. Like I said, just through my studies, I've tried. What I did is I tried to totally not to go into it blind, because you can't just go into something like totally ignorant, But I tried to do it where I had no prior information. Like, I've studied it a lot, so it's kind of hard to unlearn certain things. I've studied gravity a lot, but it was hard to unlearn it. But I just really had to see it from a point of view of not trying to disprove gravity, but what if no one had ever discovered gravity? What would be my approach to trying to figure out what keeps us grounded and what makes things rise, So, and I think that's how most science should be approached, not trying to disprove something, but trying to figure out, okay, what's going on, Well,
that's a refreshing change on last week, Knoxy, is what I'll say.
Oh, cool.
Expand, Adam.
We've been, if you saw last week's show, we got engaged in the H2O debate. It'd be quite interesting, actually, not to see what I don't know if you all have heard what's going off with water's not made of hydrogen and oxygen debate. What your guys' thoughts on that were?
Well, was there like some kind of debate or something going on?
There's a couple of folks in the community that are making assertions, that water is not composed of hydrogen and oxygen.
Knoxy, I'm glad you don't know what the hell we're talking about. It shows that these guys are just amateur nobodies
that seems to be the case when I mention it to other people.
Yeah,
recently.
likewise.
They all are like, who is that? What is that? In fact, Shane had no clue this morning on our show on TFR.
Oh, I need to know what it's made of. If it's not made of hydrogen and oxygen, please tell me.
It's an element. It's water. It's aqua. It is what it is.
According to these guys. Water. According to these guys.
Yeah, according to these guys.
Oh, so they watch too many like martial arts movies. You know what I mean? It's like the elemental of water and wood. You know what I mean? Like,
be like
fire
water.
Elemental. You know, it's a totally different definition.
they appear to have been brought up in the Awake Souls University of Science, where if you make an assertion, nobody can disprove your nonsense assertion, then it stands as fact. Seems to be the way they work. We worked hard last week to show that you can get hydrogen out. I put a quick experiment together, and we had a little pop test and so on and so forth. And I've seen this week they've admitted that actually they seem to be getting oxygen out of the water now. But
really?
They put that down. Yeah, they put that. This is great, this job.
Because hold on, Adam. First of all, you came out and last week we showed the experiment where you were producing a combustible gas that we're calling hydrogen.
Burns with yellow flame.
Then they came on. Yeah, the burns with yellow flame. Then they came on and put out a video saying oxygen only can't be taken from. There was no mention of hydrogen anymore, whereas before it was hydrogen and oxygen don't make up water. Now they've dropped the hydrogen part of it and said you can't get oxygen out of water. Now you're saying
they've been getting oxygen. Are you ready? Well, I will explain it. That from the brief, I listened to it about 5. I turned it off. I think I grasped the concept. What they're saying is they've got some oxygen now, but they know that oxygen's not in water. So the logical conclusion they're following is that somehow what must be happening is somebody is impregnating the graphite electrodes with oxygen so that as they react in the water, it's that's being released. And the proof of that is through continued electrolysis, the graphite electrodes decompose. So there you go. Solid science, guys.
Well, okay. I see they still haven't retracted.
Can I just ask? First I'm hearing of this as well. So what do fish breathe?
We brought that up.
No. Fish are breathing dissolved oxygen within the water.
So there is oxygen. It's just it's dissolved.
Yeah. So what they're saying is they're not saying there's no oxygen or things in there. They're saying that water itself is not made up of 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen. It is in of itself a separate element that is not hydrogen or oxygen in any way, shape, or it is, as Josh said, aqua.
But now they're saying they've left out the hydrogen part, and now they're saying there is oxygen in there. So, okay, right, gotcha.
They probably stepped it up to an 8th grade level experiment paper and realized that they're working on it. They're going to make it work out.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's a 7th grade level experiment paper they sent us to replicate their experiment to demonstrate this.
7th grade level
experiment paper. It was like a public service announcement sent out by the Department of Energy.
Yeah.
8th grade paper or something. Well, I suggest we leave Jasper and Carrot to it. Cutting edge.
I keep telling y'all that it's Dan Castellaneta playing a role.
I got that job.
I just saw a video across my feed that apparently they've teamed up with some of the sheeple out there, and now they're forming a waterless Voltron superpower to be dealt with, I guess. So I see Sheeps and Neeps and those 2 other characters just did a video together, so that should be exciting.
Can't wait.
On a side note, just an interesting question I've been meaning to ask since we started this whole event. Our buddy Wizlaws in chat is asking, do you have a YouTube channel, Knoxy, or another venue that we can see stuff of yours?
No, I don't. My YouTube, I have a YouTube channel, but it's totally dedicated to like animation and just stupid things right now. Because, like I said, I wasn't.
Well, please
wasn't
share, because
heavily-
I was so intrigued when you mentioned that early on in the broadcast, and then we just jumped flat and we never went back. So we'll definitely have to talk about some of that. I'm a huge cinephile, so.
Oh yeah, I just have a few of my animations on it. I don't really have a lot of my special effects and stuff, but I'll be posting a lot more stuff. My name is Plastic Life. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to say hey to everybody in the chat room real quick, and my name's Plastic Life, and you guys can check out my animations and stuff like that. But I'll be posting a lot more. Like I said, my plans they weren't really to be like a vocal flat earther or a truther. I just like doing art, animation, and film, and I'm a student of the sciences, and I came across this and really started getting back into my.
Paul on the plane. Then he met Paul on the plane.
Paul on the plane.
Shoved him into the spotlight because it was awesome stuff he was working on.
Yeah, and
sounds like a familiar story.
But I will be releasing the channel as soon as this documentary is ready. That'll be the first video I have on my channel. It's going to be probably call it a Steve Observes or whatever. It's going to be like my version of TED Talks. You know what I mean? So. I think it's an acronym for studying and examining visual evidence. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Knoxy Natters instead of
Knoxy.
Is it Plastic Space Life? And it's sort of some sort of anime sort of stuff?
He dropped it over there in the chat. Yeah. His account there. Where is it? I've lost it. Oh. Here, I'll share the link with us in the chat as well.
Okay, I think I've got it.
All right. Hey, it's me, Knoxy.
So it looks like Anthony is waiting for us to debut his exclusive video. So I guess we need to move on. Since we were discussing one pair of slime balls. No, I'm being ugly now. I'll stop. But I think, Josh, do you have it, or are you the one even sharing this? I may have sent it to the wrong person.
Can I ask one question, guys? Someone in the beginning was asking me. I said something about being a biomedical engineer or something, and someone said they wanted to mention something about that, and I said I left that and started doing art.
Yeah, that was me that laughed. When I started my college adventures, I went to the college that I chose because of their amazing music department and was planning on getting into computer animation possibly. Quickly realized the math was just not my friend and just went straight all music. And a friend saw me doodling one day and just could not believe I wasn't over in the art department. So I went from a computer music type major to just music, art, and then about halfway through the second year, my love of biology and science just kept eating away because I had been hanging out with all the science nerds and fell headlong into that. So by the time I ended it, I had gone through, I didn't have a clue what I was going to do. I guess I was going to do animation of some sort that was biochemically related to, I don't know, I was all over the place, but it was just funny that you changed like you did with those two interesting, totally unrelated fields.
Yeah, so unrelated, It's crazy. But, just it's what I fell into, man. It's what I love to do. And oddly enough, it led me here, I wouldn't even be, I don't even think I would have came across this if it hadn't been for me being an animator, No, and it's weird though. Just after looking at all the flat Earth stuff, because I found out about flat Earth maybe in 2015, 2014, and I just didn't take it serious, But it's weird just after hearing all the flat Earth guys talk, and then when you start looking at the TV shows that you used to love, like the Cosmos, and you're like, wow, everything really is a cartoon, And Paul and I, we released that Jupiter footage. Remember, like on our second show or something, Paul, right? And it's clearly
the one in the water, or they obviously did it in with some water effects.
Yeah, they used a fluid, a certain fluid tank, an effect they used to use in the the late 70s and early 80s, right? Where they used to make everybody's seen like the Never Ending Story, right? Where they make the clouds and you're like the nothing is coming. It's like, wow, those clouds look so cool. They're really like fluids underwater, right?
Absolutely. My first exposure to that was Close Encounters with the clouds coming around the Devil's Tower.
Wow, right. Mine too, probably. So they didn't quite do that, but that's how they simulated the Jupiter looking like it was spinning. It was really inside of a tank with a circle. What do you call it? Basically like a circular mask around it, so you can only see a circle. And they just had the fluid going in. They must have had some kind of engine underneath the tank or something. At some point, you can see the fluid shift and everything. So when I called NASA out about it, and they literally banned their own footage from YouTube.
You can't find that. You can't find that video anymore. In fact, you've tried to put it up, and it gets shut down, doesn't it, or gets taken down?
It gets flagged.
Some
parts
flagged.
of it are up, but not the parts that totally you can tell now. Because back then effects looked amazing to us. Now they look like crap, right? Those 80s special effects, they were awesome back then. Now they look horrible, and everybody can see it.
I was watching what was it? Battlestar Galactica and what's the? Oh God.
Rogers.
Buck Rogers, that's it. Thanks. Thank you so much.
Diggy.
We've been going for an hour and 40. I don't know if you guys, if Josh, or I don't know if we're sticking a break in there.
We better play Riley's video, or we'll be in trouble.
What's that then?
Anthony's video is the Bill Miller video, Josh, just to save time.
Bill Miller video. What's that all
Can
about?
you guys provide the context here? Sorry, I'm a
Yeah,
little late
right.
to the party. Can you just set up the video before you play it so we're all can
I don't
enjoy
have
it even more?
Full context of this aspect because I've lost the thread. I was in on the beginning of all of this. One morning I jumped into the Nathan Oakley 1980 channel, like, subscribe, share, and hopefully to do a little flat earth discussion. And we were joined by a very unspecial guest, this gentleman, George, I think Scumbag is his last name, who had a huge hand in getting my brain. Yes, thank you so much. Got his channel taken down, and it was just the most amazing display of just sliminess and total disregard for another human being's livelihood, and just oh my goodness, the thing he called his employer, his licensure board in Florida, to inquire if there were any ethical violations or any kind of complaints or anything. Basically stirring shit, putting his name in their ear about his flat earth research on his Balls Out Physics channel. And now we know all of that is gone.
I know what you're talking about.
We spent about an hour trying to get him to show us somewhere in these guidelines that he alleged he was so offended by this channel that he had to call this board. And it was just a bunch of gribble grabble, and it's just ridiculous. So apparently it has continued now, and he's been trying to cover his own ass, basically, with what he actually said and what he actually did. And it looks like Anthony may have caught him out in a nice little series of a slime trail. And this video seems to be quite humorous, the little bit of it I watched. So that's the only context I can provide. If Anthony's still in chat, he may have more.
So Anthony's put out a video sort of highlighting all this nonsense, is that right? Do you know how long the video is?
Not long at all, and I wouldn't say it's actually highlighting it per se.
90 seconds, John.
Okay. Cool. Let's play that then.
Boy is still defending his position that he did nothing wrong by calling this board of people who could potentially have been his employers, and we know for sure not long after this his channel disappeared with all the amazing content. Luckily, some of it got salvaged, and we get to see it over there on the 24 Hour Globebusters channel. If it's somewhere else, I'm not sure. Let me know.
Well, have I not seen a video this week that George Scumbag's put up with setting up a call line for you to leave a message for him, or he'll come back to you?
Anthony did a video on that this morning. So Anthony did that on a video this morning. I think he did a voiceover, which was classic. I did see that, so this is all starting to make sense. So if you haven't seen that,
we can call it live if you want, just as a heads up. That might be interesting.
Give it a go.
All right, so I think I'm sharing screens with you guys. So now you should be able to hear.
Poor George, poor guy. He got offended, huh?
Yeah, ethics. His ethics were just.
He was questioning ethics. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
He's so sensitive. He's such a sensitive guy.
Has this George put his face out there in front of a whiteboard and told us what his qualifications are and who the board of governors that anyone who's equally offended can get in contact and maybe ruin his entire livelihood?
Life, right. That would be nice.
Have you seen what Bob's put in chat? Apparently the number he put up, you know how we've got the flat line? Yeah. Apparently this one is 1-800 and then the last bit translates to eat shit.
Yeah, he was just trolling. He was just thumbing his just trying to rub it in. So obviously he's not backing down from what he did, so it's funny. Poor guy. Mr. Sensitive George got offended.
All right. Now
So he's going after Bob now as well, I see. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, I'm kind of playing catch up as well. I try to stay out of all this drama and mudslinging as much as possible. But being that I was there in the middle of the call, it was unavoidable and, just ridiculous.
Cool. Let's have a look then. Let's have a listen to Tony's video. I'm intrigued.
Real quick, I just want to say I've been able to avoid George because I just simply ignore him. He puts a comment on one of my videos, I erase it immediately. I don't even read it. When he says something in chat, I don't respond. That's how I got rid of George.
Best way.
Just put that 2 cents out there.
It's the best way.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is another reason I tried to avoid this crowd.
I don't see the video on the live feed, Josh. I just see it in Skype, just FYI.
Yeah, it should be updating soon. I was waiting until I thought we were going to start to get close to playing it. So it should be popping up any minute.
It just did. Okay, we're good.
Right on. I done. Yep. Without much further ado, this is exclusive. I don't even think this has been released on Ant's channel yet. So this is pretty cool.
May I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please? Will the real
Brian Mullen
please stand up? I repeat, will the real
Brian Mullen
please stand up? We're gonna have a problem here.
Hi, I'm Brian Mullen, and this is
Georgia here.
Warning, bullshit alert.
No one has ever been able to show me that there is a connection between Brian Mullen taking down his videos and disappearing from the Flat Earth community and any actions that I have taken.
That was bullshit.
You people have assumed that I'm referring to Brian Mullen here, which I'm not. I'm referring to a man by the name of Bill Miller.
Bullshit detected. Take precautions.
This was an experiment to see what you Flat Earthers would do with it. And you didn't disappoint me. You jumped to conclusions and you assumed BM was Brian Mullen. And nowhere have I ever claimed that I spoke to Brian Mullen or contacted him. Never.
That was bullshit.
Which I'm not. I'm referring to a man by the name of Bill Miller. Bill Miller. Bill Miller. Bill Miller.
Bullshit, 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 bullshit.
Bill Miller was a FE champion, but no longer as well.
And go Google Bill Miller Flat Earth and see what you get.
Crazy.
And
Who's Bill Miller?
Exactly. It's not anyone. It's bullshit. That's exactly what it is. There is no Bill Miller related to Flat Earth anywhere and or ever. There's no relation. There's no links. There's no search history for this person that doesn't exist.
And that was Anthony Riley. Obviously, his channel is Sleeping Warrior.
Yes, Sleeping Warrior. Get over there, hit that like, hit that sub, hit that share.
Not yet, though.
But not right now.
I'll tell you what, he isn't. A wicker Slim Tony. But, sorry, cool.
And for those that are listening, if you would like to see, I think Glowbusters has as well, but I have a playlist on my channel with all of those videos. I was lucky enough to snag a copy of those as well. So if you haven't seen Balls Out Physics by Brian Mullen, start going through those, and you'll see probably really quickly why he was considered to be over the target so quickly and unfortunately taken care of.
He was targeted without a doubt. I mean, he was a qualified structural engineer, I think, along those lines, and he harking back to what we were talking about earlier, he did a fantastic video on gravity and the bizarreness of the G within the equation, and the mass and everything else.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm done.
Well, I just saw a comment there in chat from I've lost it now, Gandalf the Great or something, that's, well, how could we demonize George when we don't even know what he did? I do know what he did. I was there on the call when he admitted exactly what he did. He told us, I called this board. I talked to these people. I put Brian Mullen's name in their ear. So there's no doubt what he did. Sorry, I'm getting emotional about this shit again because it really pisses me off that all we're trying to do is help people wake up and asking a few questions, and these people are willing to jeopardize our very lives, our livelihood. People have disappeared from the movement. Sorry.
No, you're right. You're right to be annoyed about it as well. What I would say is if you could tag into that video that Anthony did, this guy, some live on the Nathan Oakley debates, some context of him, where you're mentioning Brian Mullen and he's acknowledging that he was talking about Brian Mullen, then that would be awesome.
Well, this is what's happened, John, isn't it? And then the following day, he's put those comments you've seen in chat, intimating that he's been in touch with Brian Mullen's family. And Tony spoke to somebody who's confirmed that this George hasn't spoken to Brian Mullen at all. And then is this next bit. So the man's such a scumbag that he lies, he deceives, he puts stuff in, and then he sets up this stuff to kind of cover over the fact that he's been instantly caught out lying as he tried to paper over the cracks from his previous lies. It's just abhorrent behaviour from a man of little or no morals, as far as I can see. And I think, as Zach said earlier, it's just not worth our time, is it? It's like that and other aqua-based.
Yeah, I want to echo what Zach said. The best thing to do is to just not even engage, just ignore. And I've successfully, and knock on wood, have been able to stay away from some of that, all those ball earth zealots, shall we call them, that are just really bothered by the fact that somebody doesn't believe what they believe. And they're willing to take those steps. That just tells us everything we need to know about their character, and it's just intellectual immaturity, in my opinion.
Should we talk about something good then in flat? Like what?
Yes, let's do
some positives.
Yeah.
Are you doing a break? Because we're coming up to 2 hours.
Yeah, I'm doing a break for a moment, please.
Hey, real quick, guys, I got to get ready to go. It's my brother's birthday, so I got to head out to his party. But I just want to say thanks so much for having me on, man. I had so much fun, guys. Like, I really appreciate it,
Oh, no.
Absolutely. Thank you, man.
You're welcome back
anytime.
anytime.
I definitely want to have you back anytime. Sorry, John, go.
No, I think we're sort of connected on some sort of level, Walt, because
we tend to be, so yes.
Yeah. No, Knoxy, brilliant. Great to meet you.
You too, guys.
Yeah, love to get you back on. You got a lot to say, and I cannot
Absolutely.
wait for this Gravity documentary. I'm waiting for that. Brilliant.
I think there'll be a lot
coming,
to chat about once. I know you're trying to get the finishing touches on it right now, so we're hoping he's going to be able to get that out soon and let the conversations begin. And I think what you mentioned on this week's show, Knoxy, that you already know that you're going to have to you start a follow up and you're going to have kind of a part 2 probably because there's just so much that goes into this.
Yeah, I'm learning new things like almost every day, and it's pretty weird. It's like almost like a new science. I know it's not a new science, but it kind of is, because once you start adding a different definition to something, then it just kind of snowballs from there. So even with changing the buoyancy equation from G to another symbol, taking that G out and adding another symbol, and then
I think we'll call it K.
I actually use a shape. So but yeah, once we release it, I think it'll make perfect sense to everyone, and it's simple. It's so simple. So man, like I said, thanks again, guys.
The most powerful thing, Knoxy, just before you go, is the fact that when people see this, they can go right into their own living rooms and kitchens and swimming pools, and they can observe, they can repeat these experiments, and they're gonna go with the same observations. And that's something that that's severely missing from the other side of the argument is, where's the demonstration? Where's the observation? It's just stories, and this is real life, applicable, empirical evidence, and that's going to make all the difference when people start getting kind of wrapping their heads around this, in my opinion.
That's right. You can retest everything, and I put in detail how I perform these experiments, and you can go out and do them yourself, and it doesn't end with me. I think that's the cool thing about it. Like, I'll put it out and let the rest of the world have at it. Try to disprove it, and please, because we need to find out the truth. So try your best to disprove it and recreate these experiments. Do your own, and then I don't know. I think it'll turn into something huge. So yeah,
definitely, Knoxy. I'm looking forward to that, guys, and I'll echo the other guys' thoughts, mate. And thanks it's been great to meet you tonight. I've really enjoyed it. What's your brother's name?
You too. My brother John.
John, another one. Happy birthday, John.
Happy birthday, John. Definitely add Flat Earth Head on Skype there, man. I want to pick your brain about movies and animation, and I know we'll be lost for hours. Have a great night. Thank you again.
Yeah. All right, and if you need my Facebook or anything, Paul has it. Me and Paul are Facebook friends, so.
Absolutely, man.
All right, guys.
Thanks so much, Knoxy.
Thanks.
Oh, bye-bye.
Take care, Knoxy.
All right, guys.
Wow, brilliant stuff. Paul, I don't know about you, but swimming pools as reality? We sort of live in the UK over here. Swimming pools are not a reality over here, that's for sure.
Yeah, they're a little more common, I guess, here in the United States.
But you have swimming pools at I mean, here we have all the colleges and stuff will have a swimming pool, or there'll be local municipal pools, where all the children are running around at summertime and that sort of thing. I mean, where I'm at, it's pretty hot. We get up to 90, 100 degrees during the summer for about 2 or 3 months. It'll be pretty warm. So we have a little bit of a swimming season. So maybe that's the difference.
We got indoor swimming pools that are almost 100% chlorine and are fantastic breeding grounds for any sort of bug or disease or horrible scurvy that you care to jump into.
They need more chlorine. More chlorine.
Lots more chlorine.
I think it's hilarious.
Happen. Waiting to happen.
All right, bathtubs, ponds, sinks, where you keep,
puddles.
Water
We've
basins,
got a lot of puddles over here. Yeah, potholes and puddles.
That's where you'll have to do your experiments then.
Will do. God, can't wait for it. Right, what's going on then, Josh?
Well,
come on, John's desperate for us to play Gravity. He's asked about 4 times.
We have to have a break for just a minute. We can get back and have some more time with Paul, please. I hope you don't have to leave, right?
I do, because I'd like to talk about, I don't know, we haven't discussed this, but Tesla's Apple.
Yes.
Okay.
I got about 30 more minutes, and then I'm gonna have to run myself.
Then a quick video break, so
let's do a break, and then let's chat for a little bit longer.
Cool. Sounds good.
Who's got it lined up? I'm no good this week.
I've got it, actually.
I should hope so. I've been building up to it for 15 minutes.
Gosh, on
I'm muting there.
I got my hand up.